got the latest reports on John Harbaugh's contract situation and the fact that the negotiations haven't started yet. So what's going on there and what will happen? I've got reports from Jeff Zrebeck coming up on that and his predictions of what will happen. What about with Mark Andrews and his future? We've talked about before. It's unlikely that the Ravens will cut him and move on from him, but what about a trade? Are there other options that might be able to happen in order to bring his cap hit down? And also, a lot of you guys have been tagging me on Twitter on this one and asking me questions about this. Is there now, again, a double standard in the way some national media, not all of them, but some national media are treating Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen after their playoff exits? And indeed, we have some receipts to show that some of them, for sure, have that double standard. Welcome inside the vault. I am Sarah Ellison. I am not yet joined by Bobby Trossett. He is still trying to make his way back from, when I tell you, a nasty bout. It is a nasty bout with the flu. We keep hoping that he's going to turn the corner. Hopefully he will. He is doing his best to get back. So again, much love to him and support, and hopefully he will get better sooner than later. So lots of good stuff to dive into today. John Harbaugh, certainly a topic of debate over the last several years, really, of his future with the Ravens. And we do know that he is headed into the final year of his current contract with the Ravens. And it has been standard and customary with Steve Bisciotti, owner of the Ravens, to make sure that John Harbaugh does not enter into the final year of his contract without knowing that he's got more time. Steve Bisciotti in the past has called that a lame duck season. So what is going on there? Well, yesterday during the show, we talked about the breaking news from ESPN and Jeremy Fowler that Todd Monken is in the middle of contract negotiations for an extension with the Ravens. It is believed that he had a 2-year deal, which is up. And so in order for him to stay in Baltimore, they would have to extend him. It's not necessarily just trying to keep him away from coaching positions, because it looks like those have all dried up. He didn't get any of those. There's still one available, but there's no reports of him being connected to the Saints. And so Jeff Zrebeck yesterday was asked a couple questions stemming off of this. One follower asked Jeff Zrebeck, he said, what's the sense in terms of Harb's staying long-term as the head coach? Is it something that is imminent? Jeff said, well, when I checked in on it late last week, so it's now Tuesday, maybe he checked in Thursday or Friday. When I checked in on it last week, it sounded like that official conversations haven't yet started. So they haven't begun, according to Jeff. But they've done so many of these contracts and have such an open line of communication that it needn't take very long at all. Another follower asks Jeff, is there any sense on if the team views Monken as their heir apparent to head coach? I know he's just 3.5 years younger than John, but still could be interesting. It could still be an interesting development and affect extension talks with John. I think that might be wishful thinking. Jeff agrees. He says, I don't think they are there yet. They like Monken, but it's not like he's the definitive coach in waiting. So contracts have not yet begun. Contract talks haven't yet begun. But if we dig a little deeper, because Jeff also wrote a more in-depth opinion piece for The Athletic. And here's what he had to say about the whole process and what he projects to happen with John and the organization. The question he posed is, will contract negotiations with Harbaugh go routinely? And he said they usually do. And there's been no signs that either owner Steve Bisciotti or Harbaugh is looking for an escape hatch. Harbaugh, the second longest tenured coach in the NFL behind Pittsburgh's Mike Tomlin, has one more year left on his contract. But Bisciotti is not a believer in having his head coach work under the final year of his deal. He said that on multiple occasions. Unless he's changed his mind or Harbaugh wants to go year to year, an extension will have to be worked out before July. Plenty of time to get that done. There is organization-wide frustration, Jeff says, about the Ravens coming short in the playoffs. But the team's top decision makers have been firmly behind Harbaugh and believe he's one of the top coaches in football. Harbaugh has a strong relationship with Bisciotti, team president Sashi Brown, and DaCosta, and they're all in this together. As long as both sides are motivated to come to agreement, Jeff says this shouldn't be an arduous process. My prediction is that they will get an extension by July, if not sooner. And my prediction is that he will be extended through the year 2028. That's what I think is going to happen. I know that's not going to be very happy. That's not going to be good news to those who are ready to move on from John, but I think that they will do it, and I think they'll extend him through 2028. That's been customary. He keeps getting those 3-year extensions. Meanwhile, though, I have been asked on Twitter and on this show about my opinion on John Harbaugh. And people, try to sway me, which is fine, into believing that he should be let go. So yesterday, Scott Kaskar, I hope I'm saying that right. His name got cut off there, so I'm not able to read it. It might be Kaskmar. He pointed out all the blunders, which is just brutal to relive, quite frankly. All the blunders and playoff losses since 2008, which is when John Harbaugh became the head coach of the Ravens. So we talked about 2008. Remember that Palomalu pick six? Whoa. 2009, a fumbled interception back to Indy. 2010, remember TJ Hushmanzada dropping the ball on 4th and 18? Like, it was in his hands. How many of these drops do we have to have? Joe Flacco delivered it. And TJ Hushmanzada, he was a veteran. He had been in situations like this before, coming over from the Bengals. I remember afterwards, because we wrote a story on it, he went to the locker room and said, he's like, I can't believe I dropped it. Like, he might have been the most shocked person in the building. 2011, the Lee Evans drop, and then the Cundiff miss. Woof. He skips 2012 because that's when the Ravens won the Super Bowl. So John gets, the Ravens get credit there. 2013, they missed the playoffs. I believe that was the year that Joe Flacco was injured. 2014, Flacco forced an interception in New England. And you don't get back there until 2018. Lamar had a strip sack. 2019, 3 turnovers versus the Titans. Are you guys having fun yet? 2020, the pick six in Buffalo. 2022, the Huntley fumble and the return for a touchdown against the Bengals. 2023, the Flowers fumble at the 1 plus Lamar triple coverage interception. And then 2024, we just lived Andrews fumble and dropped 2-point conversion. As Scott says, it's always something. So why do I bring that up now? Because a follower of mine who also listens to the show, Jay, don't know if you're listening today, but thanks for the question. Jay says, Sarah, I know you're a big Harbaugh guy, but I'm curious on your opinion here. This has been a trend in the playoffs since John took over. At what point do we start to say he has an issue with preparing his guys for the biggest games? And I said to Jay, and I stand by today, that I don't blame John. It's hard for me to blame John Harbaugh for Lee Evans dropping a pass that's in his hands. I don't understand the correlation to being like, Lee Evans, you had the ball in your hands. You dropped it. He kind of got it knocked out. It wasn't as bad as Mark Andrews. That's John Harbaugh's fault. Or Billy Cundiff, you missed wide left. That's John Harbaugh's fault. Or TJ Hushmanzada, you're a veteran and you dropped the ball. You yourself can't believe you dropped it, but somehow John Harbaugh did that to you. Somehow he did that to you. Right? Flowers extending the ball, trying to make a play. John Harbaugh did that to him. And Mark Andrews, the ball is in your hands. You dropped the 2-point conversion. John Harbaugh did that to you. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to do that. They're grown professionals. They're paid. They're motivated. I've seen the Ravens emphasize ad nauseum protecting the ball, no turnovers, all that kind of stuff. I've seen that. I've seen John emphasize it. I've seen coordinators emphasize it. At some point, the players just have to execute. But I did say to Jay, I said, I think the best argument to move on from Harbs is that it's just time for change. Okay, it's time for a new voice. And the best argument is that it's been more than a decade since the Super Bowl, and he's not advancing with an MVP, soon to be 3-time MVP. To me, that's the best. Rather than trying to connect Harbaugh to a dropped pass that's right in Mark Andrews' hands, rather than trying to make like that stretch, to me, it's just better to say, the better argument is that, look, you've been doing this. You did great in 2012. You got a Super Bowl with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs and Joe Flacco and Anquan Bolden, all those guys. But you have a soon to be 3-time MVP, and you haven't advanced to the Super Bowl yet. And you know what? You've had plenty of chances. You just haven't done it yet. To me, that's the best argument that one can make. And I think it goes along here. Skeptic Goat, I've had him on the show before. Really respect his opinion. Great Ravens Twitter follow if you haven't followed him already. Highly recommend it. He makes this case. He says the Eagles moved on from Andy Reid. Who are they going to find to replace him? He quotes some probably random person who's asked that a million times. I do not ask that question because you have to uncover the next great coach, right? It's not, to me, it's not going out and doing what the Raiders just did, and getting, a former Super Bowl winner. Like you want to start a new dynasty with somebody. So I'm not saying go out and get a Pete Carroll or Bill Belichick is now in North Carolina, so I guess he's not available. So Skeptic says, well, the Eagles found 2 different coaches and made 3 Super Bowl appearances since he left. Skeptic says, don't be afraid to move on from a good coach that has hit a wall. I'm just saying. So like I said, I think that's the best argument. Now, because it's the best argument doesn't mean that you can't poke holes in it. So if one wanted to come back and say, okay, well, if I want to poke holes in this, you could say, okay, let's take the Eagles. There's two big holes in this argument, which I know Skeptic, I haven't talked to him on Twitter. I'd be happy to, but I know Skeptic won't take this personal because he's a rational dude, and I think he appreciates good debate. Maybe we can have him on here and debate this more. To me, there are the knocks that you could say to this is like, okay, they've been to 3 Super Bowl appearances. The one in 2018 they lost to the Patriots. So Andy Reid couldn't get past the Patriots, and neither could the new head coach. In 2023, they went to the Super Bowl, and they lost to the Chiefs, whose head coach was, wait for it, Andy Reid. So you're making an argument to move on by saying, well, this team got rid of their head coach, and then when they met him in the Super Bowl, they lost the very head coach that they fired. That to me is a big, big hole in that argument. And what if that happens in 2024? We'll see. If the Eagles beat the Chiefs in 2 weeks, then Skeptic has a much bigger, much stronger argument. Much stronger. If the Eagles beat the Chiefs and the Chiefs have their former head coach who they fired, then you have a better argument. But if Andy Reid beats the Eagles twice in the Super Bowl, then this is a bad example to point to. I will also say that they fired Andy Reid when he went 12-20 over 2 seasons in 2011 and 2012. It's not like they made like this big leap of faith, where Andy Reid was coming off of a NFC championship game and a divisional game, because that would be more the equivalent. He was 12-20 over his last 2 seasons. So it would be a much bigger leap for Steve Bisciotti to move on from John Harbaugh than what the Eagles did. Here's my second pushback to this argument. It is true that the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl. But let me ask you this. If the Eagles take the team exactly as constituted, all the coaches, all the players, the front office, everybody, you put that exact team in the AFC North and in the conference of the AFC, and then you move the Ravens exactly as constituted with John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson, and everybody else, the exact same teams, and just switch divisions and conferences. Would John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson have more Super Bowl appearances? Probably. Because you don't have to get through Mahomes. But here's the deal. When the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl from the NFC, avoiding the AFC gauntlet, which back in 2018 included Patriots and Tom Brady, and now includes the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Well, the Eagles lost to them once they met them in the Super Bowls. So who's to say they would even have made a Super Bowl appearance? But if you put the Ravens in the NFC, I'd feel, these are all hypotheticals, obviously, but I would feel very confident that Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh in the NFC East would have made a couple of Super Bowl appearances. Now, would they have won them if they met Patrick Mahomes there? Probably not. They haven't beat him in the AFC yet. Not in the AFC playoffs. So, again, I think the best argument is that you just feel like it's time to move on. And you say, you know what? I don't think that John Harbaugh he's had his chances against Andy Reid and the Chiefs. He's had his chances. Why keep doing the same thing over and over and over again? Give somebody else a shot. That to me is the biggest argument. But that's tough to do if you're in Steve Bisciotti's shoes and you've got to answer it, because what if you take a step back? He's like, I'm knocking on the door. I'm knocking on the door. So it's much easier to say that as somebody sitting at home. Here's what Steve Bisciotti said back in 22. The last time he extended John Harbaugh, he did an interview with a few reporters at the owners' meetings. And like I mentioned, he said, I have no interest in having John Harbaugh go lame duck on me here. It's not fair to him. I think John's grown and grown and grown. It's kind of interesting. I don't feel like I'm just signing up the same guy. I think that's really a compliment to him. I really feel like there's a rebirth in John as the years go on. Things that matter to him don't matter as much anymore. I'm just thrilled as an owner to have a guy that's going to be going into his 15th year, so I'm pretty pleased with it. Now, he may have changed his mind, a couple years later, but I would actually submit it, like, those that were arguing for Harbaugh to be let go last year, I think had a better argument, because I think that AFC Championship loss was more on the coaches, whereas the divisional round loss wasn't. And I would also say this to Steve Bisciotti's point, that John keeps having like rebirths every year. I think that this year, 2024, with how disappointing it was to end, has probably been John Harbaugh's best coaching season in several years, maybe a decade. You think about what they overcame. You obviously had 3 new offensive linemen, plus you lost your offensive line coach, who has been in Baltimore for years. And he passes away right before the season gets started. That was gut-wrenching inside the building. I don't even know that we quite understand that, being on the outside of the building. He's able, and boy, did the offensive line go through growing pains. But the offensive line is not why they lost in that divisional round. With that offensive line, and obviously thanks to Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, the Ravens put up 3,000 passing yards and 2,000 rushing yards, which has never been done before. Then John Harbaugh was able to buckle down with his brand new defensive coordinator. And in the first 10 games, things were so dismal that they were number 32 in pass defense through the first 10 games. And in the final 8 games, they became number 1 in most categories, the defense as a whole. And he was able to adjust on the fly, call back in Dean Pease, work with his new defensive coordinator who was brand new at this. Then he overcame the Steelers, which has had the Ravens number over the last couple years, beat him in week 16, and then whipped him in the playoffs. And then by bringing in his second year, Todd Monken, somehow they found a way to open things up for Lamar Jackson to even have his best statistical year ever, despite already being a 2-time MVP. It might have been his best. Now, last year was the year, if Steve Bisciotti was going to move on, last year would have been, you had Mike McDonald. The AFC Championship game was mostly a coaching problem, in my view. Doesn't absolve everything else, but mostly a coaching view. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think they're going to move on. I agree with Jeff. I think that it's going to probably get done by July, and I think it'll be a 3-year extension. Meanwhile, Jeff asked one more question. He had a really good, Jeff tackled probably, hold on. I got a lot of super chats, which is probably on this topic. So why don't we hit those up before I move on to Mark Andrews? Okay. Let you guys have a voice here if you're disagreeing with me or agreeing. Who knows? Captain Hard, always the first one with the $5 super chat. It's been this way since I think the season ended. Got a little streak going on here. Captain Hard says, afternoon. The only reason to get rid of John is just to switch it up and get a new voice. But other than that, he's the right coach. I agree. I think that basically, you said that much more succinctly than I just did. The Brittle says, if nothing changes with Harbaugh, then nothing overall will change. I think what they're saying. Ugh. Captain Hard, you have to at least give John one more year, especially when Lamar is finally clicking in the playoffs. You can't start over right now. That would be quite the risk. It'd be quite the risk. Some people say no risk, no glory. No guts, no glory. But again, it's Steve Bisciotti who has to live with that risk. Captain Hart again. All those player problems. All those are player problems. Yeah, I just can't do the mental gymnastics and say, look what John Harbaugh did to Mark Andrews, dropping that easy pass. No. Now, what I could blame John Harbaugh on if next year he would go back to call Mark Andrews' number in the same type of situation, and then Mark Andrews messes up again, then I'd be like, why did you go back to him? Then I could be upset with with John Harbaugh. In that situation, I could. But yeah. Oceans. John got bailed out by Lamar in 2018 because we were 4-5 before Lamar, and missing playoffs 4 to 5 years is not good. I think we need a new look. Yeah, I would say that most coaches are bailed out by the quarterbacks. Bill Belichick never did anything after Tom Brady. And Andy Reid didn't win anything until Patrick Mahomes. So that doesn't take away from what Bill or Andy or John does, but none of them are these Super Bowl champions without good players. It's a player's game at the end of the day. Evan, discussing playoff losses when talking about Harbaugh is way too narrow of a scope. The regular season losses are part of the story. Consistent trend of underachieving and not playing to our talent. All good points. I'm glad I stopped for those super chats. All right, let's move on to the next topic. So again, if you want to go check out Jeff's Rebeck, and if you don't have a subscription to The Athletic, I mean, Jeff alone is a good reason to get it. There are several other good reasons. But there we go. You know what's funny, by the way? I'm just like checking the chat as I move over. You know you have a bad argument when you try to pretend that I get a check from John Harbaugh. I don't think I've talked to John Harbaugh since I've left the Ravens 5 years ago. Just make a good argument to get rid of him. Just make a good argument. I'm in here every day with you guys. Me and Bobby doing it with you guys and doing it with the support of you guys. Make an argument rather than making up wild things out of the air. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong. You connect for me why it's John Harbaugh's fault that Mark Andrews dropped that pass. You connect it for me. Connect it for me. You lost when you have to go to that. We all know that. All right, next question that Jeff Zrebeck tackled in his athletic column, and I think he tackled like 6 or 7. We're just looking at 2. He says, what's the plan for Mark Andrews? Okay. He says this was in question even before Andrews' miscues and the season-ending loss to Buffalo. I think that's a good point. So Jeff is bringing up this topic, not just because of the 2-point conversion or lack thereof, not just because of the fumble, and not just because of the other drop. He's saying this is a legitimate question before that all happened because of the money he's being paid and the other guys in the tight end room. He says, yet that game and the fallout have only intensified the questions about Andrews' future. The 29-year-old is entering the final year of his contract. His cap hit is under $17 million for 2025. And moving on from him would create $11 million in cap room. $6 million dead money, $11 million cap room. Jeff says it seems highly unlikely that the Ravens would release one of the league's best tight ends who was coming off of an 11-touchdown regular season and who happens to be quarterback Lamar Jackson's favorite targets. No, he didn't say one of. Let me rephrase that. And who happens to be quarterback Lamar Jackson's favorite target and one of his closest friends on the team. The Ravens aren't in the business of scapegoating a guy who has been one of the team's motto players on and off the field, which is why I have never advocated cutting him or moving on from him or scapegoating him, although he indeed blew it. I like that production, and I think he could repeat that production if he's healthy. Like, I could see him in that 10 touchdown range, 9, 10, 11 again. He produces a lot. Okay. I just propose that you demote him in the biggest moments and call somebody else's number. But Jeff goes on. He says, however, I know you were looking for that but. Here's the however. He said, could they potentially trade him if they can get a quality draft pick in return? That would be one way of creating a chunk of much needed cap space while getting back a young, controllable piece. Could they extend him in a move that would lower his 2025 salary cap number? Or are both sides comfortable with Andrews playing out the final year of his deal? DaCosta will surely look at all scenarios. The situation is complicated by the fact that Baltimore's other 2 tight ends, Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, will also enter the final years of their deals in 2025. Given their salary cap limitations, it would be very hard to have both Andrews and Likely on big money tight end deals. Either way, despite Andrews' role in the loss to the Bills, it would be nearly impossible to say the Ravens would be better as a team by subtracting Andrews from the mix. Okay, so I've said this before. The big tight end money will eventually be going to Likely, Isaiah Likely. It's going to go to him. Regardless of what they do with Mark Andrews, the next big tight end contract is going to Likely. Period. Andrews has already had his big second contract, his big payday, generational type money, and he'll get more contracts going forward, whether it's with the Ravens or elsewhere. But Likely is the next guy in line. So the real question is, before Likely gets paid, what will happen with Mark? Now, I think people would be surprised by how little I think Mark Andrews would command in a trade. Like, it's certainly not in your first round category. He's in the final year of his contract. He's 29. I think even second rounds might be pushing it a little bit. So you have to add, and let's say that's best case scenario. Although I could see it more third. Shoots. A lot of times these guys go for way cheaper than you expect. A lot of times. Because this league and these GMs, not just Eric DaCosta, but they value their draft picks. There are some exceptions, though, so you never know. You never know. There's been some bad trades. I mean, we just have to look to Cleveland, right? Okay. That's for a quarterback. So it'd be hard to see them trade him. So I could see an extension, but not they wouldn't cut into Isaiah Likely's numbers. So I think it'll either be that they let him play it out this season, or they go ahead and extend him, say like by 3 years, but they leave enough money for Isaiah Likely. That's what I think. Now, if a good trade came along, fine. But I just think that I just don't think they'd get as much as you'd expect. So seems like a good idea to let him come and produce, as he usually does. Lamar loves him. Lamar looks for him. Get 9, 10, 11 touchdowns. And then just in big moments, go to either Derek, Isaiah, Zay, or Lamar himself. That's what I would do. All right. Now, I've been tagged on this next topic. I've been tagged on this and was asked about it yesterday in a super chat. Basically, like, are there two different standards for the way the media is treating Lamar and Josh Allen after their playoff losses? I hadn't seen it yet. Okay. I had seen what ESPN did. Okay. And I thought ESPN treated both pretty fairly, at least the guys that I had watched. Remember, yesterday I played this clip from Ryan Clark, which I thought was excellent. And he treated all quarterbacks that keep losing to Patrick Mahomes or early in the playoffs the same. Let me just replay that because I think he was fair.
Score a game, they can't see it.
And we talk about the legacies of these humans, right? Obviously, this was a chance for Josh Allen to change his legacy. I don't believe that his legacy takes a hit. That dude played as well as he could have possibly played. But here's my thing. I don't feel sorry for Lamar Jackson. I don't feel sorry for Joe Burrow.
Nope.
I don't feel sorry for Josh Allen. Because if you want to go get it, you understand that dude is standing out there. Yeah. I do not see people, and Stephen A., you know more basketball than I do. I do not see people having a funeral procession for Patrick Ewing. I don't see people doing that for Charles Barkley. I don't see people doing that for Karl Malone. You know why? Because that dude was out there. You understood what it was every offseason. You got to go get Michael Jordan. You got to go get Patrick Mahomes. And Josh Allen had the football down 3 with a ton of time on the clock. You got to go make the plays. I agree with that. I don't blame it on Josh. This isn't Josh's fault. But to change his legacy, he had to go do it. I agree.
So yeah, I'd been listening to ESPN after the loss to the Chiefs for the Bills, and I thought they were pretty fair. RC said it perfectly. I don't feel sorry for Lamar. I don't feel sorry for Josh. I don't feel sorry for Joe Burrow, treating them all equally. All of you guys have got to figure it out and figure out how to beat them. And earlier in that segment, Shannon Sharp said that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs carry like this fear factor. In fact, it was so good. Let me back up. Okay. Look what he said, that it's the greatest attribute that Mahomes has.
And ain't nobody feeling sorry for a man making $50 million a year and he got his butt kicked again. It doesn't matter what he played. He had Patrick Mahomes in his building last year, and Patrick Mahomes put his foot up on his couch. He goes to Patrick Mahomes' house, and Patrick Mahomes kick him out. It does not matter. It's 1-5. These guys can beat any of these other quarterbacks. Lamar can beat Burrow. Josh Allen can beat Burrow, yada, yada, yada. The greatest advantage an athlete can have is another man's fear. Ooh. They fear Patrick. Ooh. They know.
Talk this,
They
Jay.
know if it's a one-score game, they can't see it.
I heard no lies. I heard no lies there. Okay, so all losing quarterbacks treated equally. I thought ESPN was fair. But I hadn't been over to the facility. People have tagged me on this. So check this out. The facility. I actually listened to the facility, and I heard this segment the day after the Ravens loss. And I thought what they said if you just have on narrow glasses and not comparing it to their coverage of anybody else, because we didn't have the Josh Allen coverage yet. But I felt like what they said after the game was fair against Lamar. But here comes the following Monday after Josh Allen gets kicked out. So they ask the day after the Ravens lose, the question proposed to the panel is the Ravens loss on Lamar Jackson? I'm going to play a cut up of their responses. I don't think anybody is out of bounds just with that narrow lane. That's the question. Is the Ravens loss on Lamar Jackson? Fine, fair question. Okay. And I thought some of their answers were fair. We'll get to their answers in a minute. But then a week later, the question is, do you feel bad for Josh Allen? Well, wait a minute here. Lamar Jackson put together a fourth quarter drive that was way more difficult than what was ahead of Josh Allen, took him all the way, scored the touchdown, and then his tight end dropped the easiest. Okay, I'm not going to have too much hyperbole. Not the easiest, but an easy 2-point conversion. He drops it. Nobody asked if they felt bad for Lamar Jackson. But the next week, Josh Allen has a fourth quarter drive with more time, more timeouts, and he didn't lose his top 2 wide receivers. He also didn't make it. He only had to get a field goal, and he couldn't do that. But one quarterback, you ask, is he to blame? The other quarterback, do you feel bad for him? So let's back up. Let me show you the answers. Let me show you the answers that each one gave. So here it is a week ago of what they said about Lamar Jackson. Don't even tell me. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get to these. Sometimes the technology doesn't want to cooperate, but let me bring this in. Okay. Here's the Lamar one. It's now uploading and processing. Sorry. Give me a second here. Okay, here they are. Their answers to, is the Ravens loss on Lamar Jackson?
Who do you blame for that Ravens loss yesterday? Lamar Jackson had a caliber season. Ravens fell short. Do you blame Lamar for the loss?
I don't blame Lamar Jackson. Yeah, he could have had a faster start, right? But it's not, I was always taught, it's not how you start.
That's how you finish.
It's how you finish.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen Lamar Jackson in the fourth quarter? He was balling, putting plays together. I blame Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Mark Andrews fumble is crazy. It was only his second lost fumble in his entire career. So 2 drops, 1 for the game time.
Come on now.
2-point
Come on now,
conversion.
Chase.
And for me, though, I can't let Lamar Jackson go and off all of the blame, right? I think there's got to be some blame on him.
Everybody get a little bit of this. And you can give Mark Andrews a little more if you want to. You can give Lamar a little more if you want to.
From a micro perspective, is Lamar at fault? Lamar should have done more earlier in the game. But at the end of the game, Lamar took him 88 yards down the field in 2 minutes and 8 plays. Right. Mark Andrews, you have to make the catch. But my issue and your issue at home, fans, I don't know if it should be as much of the micro as the macro. Lamar Jackson, when it matters most, for whatever reason, he doesn't show up the most. Who do you blame for that Ravens loss yesterday? Lamar.
Okay, so again, not knowing the future of how they were going to cover Josh Allen, I thought all that was fair. You know, Shady first says, no, I don't blame Lamar because it's how you finish. I blame Mark Andrews. Next person says, I give it a little bit of both. James Jones, kind of same thing. I give some to Lamar, I give some to Mark, give some to coaching. That's all fair. Because Lamar, could have played better in the first half. And then Acho at the end is like, yeah, okay, this game I put more on Mark Andrews, but overall, why is it that the Ravens don't play their best in the biggest moments? Okay. Not knowing the future of how are they going to cover Josh. I thought all of that was fair. It's all fair. It's a fair question, this and that. But then why isn't the same question posed for Josh Allen? or some version of it. Because if I remember correctly, Josh got very lucky in the first half. Lamar did have those turnovers. Josh didn't, but he got lucky. They had 4 fumbles. I believe 3 of them were attributed to Josh. And they were lucky that Josh was lucky that they were all recovered by the Bills. He also threw 2 very near picks on that first drive. He was reckless. And he got a little bit lucky that the ball bounced his way in all 6 of those instances. Okay? But it didn't happen, so you can't, they weren't officially turnovers, so you can't, I guess, officially knock them. But the 2 fourth quarter drives at the end are not created equal, which is why yesterday I said, stop acting like the Kincaid drop and the Mark Andrews drop is the same. Dan Orlovsky, he tweets, we had 2 great quarterbacks just get let down in back-to-back weeks by brutal drops. Allen 2 years in a row. No. Allen didn't even get close to driving his team. And that catch was not the same. Yes, Josh Allen was under pressure, and I'm going to get to pressure in just a second. RG3 is the one speaking up about this. I'm going to play that in a minute. But Josh did not move the ball. He got 1 first down. 1 first down from the 30. Lamar had to start at the 12. Josh couldn't get him into field goal range. Yes, it would have been nice if Kincaid caught that. It was in his hands, but it was not nowhere near as easy as Mark Andrews. And it wouldn't have scored the points. Mark Andrews would have. They did not go the distance. Josh did not lead at all in any sense of in any sense lead a comeback drive that was nearly what Lamar Jackson did. Not even close. But here they are. Here are their answers to whether they feel bad for Josh. And only James Jones had consistency. James Jones did not absolve Lamar in that first one. And he doesn't feel sorry for Josh in this one. Here are their answers.
Yeah, that's tough.
I feel bad for this dude because I know how good he is. And it's we don't see how great he is because he's playing against the Chiefs every year.
I feel bad is because Josh Allen is at a coaching disadvantage. I don't know if anybody's going to say it, but that's what it comes down to. He's at a coaching disadvantage. Yesterday, Josh Allen was not at a player disadvantage. Those rosters were roughly equal. Yesterday, Josh Allen was not at a talent disadvantage. Patrick Mahomes was not significantly greater than Josh Allen. Josh Allen was at a coaching disadvantage.
I feel bad, too. I feel bad just for Josh because, the last 8 games with the Chiefs, everyone knows this. He's 4-0 in the regular season. So he gets it done in the regular season. He's 0-4 in the playoffs. He played almost 1,200 snaps this season. It came down to 1 or 2 plays. Those were the biggest plays in his career. I feel bad for Josh Allen.
Hey, man. We're getting a little soft in here in the facility on Monday.
Yes, sir.
I remember sitting in the locker room like this after losing the NFC Championship games.
Who you lose to?
Lost the Giants. And only person that felt bad for me was Mama. But other than that, don't nobody care. If we would have said it's going to be a 1-score game, the ball going to be in Josh's hands with 2 minutes plus in the game, and he got all 3 of his timeouts.
You take that.
Got to go find a way to win, Josh.
Got to go find a way to win, Josh. James Jones is absolutely right. Nowhere in that previous segment did they say, oh, man, Lamar Jackson had 1,200 snaps during the season. He played so well. Probably going to be the MVP. And then it comes down to the one play with Mark. Right? No, they point out what he didn't do well. Nowhere did anybody give an excuse for a coaching disadvantage. And as I just had in that first segment, saying that I won't blame John Harbaugh for player execution, so defending him a little bit for those that do. Even though I'm not advocating for John Harbaugh to be fired, I also don't think that John Harbaugh is out coaching Andy Reid. But nobody says that for Lamar, right? It's more like Lamar needs to step up against Patrick Mahomes, and he's a 2-time, soon to be 3-time MVP. So only James Jones, he brought sanity to it, saying that we got soft in the facility. And only my mom felt sorry for me when I got knocked out of the playoffs. So, yeah, it's definitely different. It's a double standard right here inside the facility. Not all media. I'm not gonna brush all media with the broad stroke, because I just gave an example on ESPN where I thought they were fair with all of them. But yeah, inside the facility, minus James Jones, there was a double standard for sure. The question alone, you didn't even have to hear the answers. But here's the thing. If there has to be a double standard, and there doesn't have to be, but if there's gonna be a double standard, you go and and baby the quarterback up in Buffalo. Because what they're doing is giving him pity. I hope that Josh soaks that in and feels sorry for himself. Look at these guys feeling bad for me. Look at these guys feeling sorry for me. So now I'm going to feel sorry for myself. Josh probably won't do that. I like Josh. I think he's a good quarterback. This is not a critique on Josh. This is a critique of how the facility covered Josh versus Lamar. So I'm not trying to take any shots at Josh. But they're babying him. Don't baby my quarterback here in Baltimore. Okay? Because there's no time to feel sorry for ourselves. You want to know why? Because Patrick Mahomes doesn't feel sorry for Lamar. Andy Reid doesn't feel sorry for Lamar. Steve Spagnuolo doesn't feel sorry for Lamar. And while Lamar's disappointed and fed up and frustrated and disappointed, I doubt he feels sorry for himself. All he's done since losing that game is tweet about his faith in God. His head isn't down. He doesn't need to be babied like they just did for Josh Allen. Josh Allen doesn't need that either. Doesn't need it. Just don't need your pity. Don't want your pity. Take it and send it up to Buffalo because we don't want it here. Meanwhile, RG3 did call out. Let's see if I got this slide here. He did call out what Josh Allen did wrong on that fourth quarter play. And I appreciate that from him. Let me see, where did I guess I don't have it in here, so I'll take this off. But here's audio. He was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams. My girl, love that girl. Appreciate her having me on and her support. Here he is talking about that final drive.
This play, though, that you have on the screen with the catch, that's a very difficult catch to make. Can he make it? Yes. But you know what? No one has pointed this out the entire day. And last night. I've watched the tape back multiple times. Josh Allen actually could have adjusted the protection and got that blitz picked up. But no one is talking about that because I think there's a fear right now amongst the media to criticize Josh Allen because he has been so great. And I do think Josh Allen is a great quarterback. But they're in an empty formation. They motion Khalil Shakur into the back and have him run that bubble. If Josh Allen simply gave I don't know what they call it, but it's an RL call, and it borrows the backside guard and takes them to the right, they would pick up that blitz, and he would have had an opportunity to hit Dalton Kincaid for a massive gain with the entire blitz picked up. And if they didn't pick it up, he still would have been able to throw the swing pass out to Khalil Shakur if that end ended up dropping, pressured him. That to me was a bigger issue than Kincaid dropping the ball. So I don't know why no one has pointed that out, but that's his job. And there's 18 seconds on the game clock. So it wasn't like the clock was running down and he just had to run the play. They had time. He could have made that adjustment. He didn't, and it cost him the game.
Fair analysis. This is coming from a former NFL quarterback who knows protections, who knows what you can do there at the line of scrimmage, and recognize it. Maybe Josh didn't recognize it in the moment, but these are what these quarterbacks are empowered to do. And so on top of not doing anything for those 6 plays and only getting 1 first down, when you had 3 minutes and 30 seconds and 3 touchdowns and you're at the 30 and all you need is a field goal. Lamar takes his whole team down the field, gets the touchdown, and the 2-point conversion is, placed right in his hands, right at his numbers, and he drops it. But you feel sorry for one and not the other. Good. Take your pity up to Buffalo because we don't want it in Baltimore. All right. Let me see. One more super chat came in here. Ocean says, RC said Allen isn't to blame and Lamar is. I do remember. No, I heard RC say both. I don't know if it was in that clip, but I know I did watch it yesterday. Maybe on a different time, Oceans. I mean, he speaks on a lot of shows. But what I heard him say for both quarterbacks is that, and I'm not protecting RC. If he did, send me the clip, and I'm happy to play it. But in the show that I watched on First Take, and he was also on Get Up, I listened to him there. Is he said he doesn't blame either Allen or Lamar, but that neither went out and won the game. I heard him say that. Now, if he said something different elsewhere, let me know. But that's what I heard him say. All right. One last thing on this topic. And I do need to follow up with this. Remember, Chris Sims also went on the Up and Adam show after the Ravens loss. And he said the following about Lamar's pass to Mark Andrews. He said, Lamar made it as hard as it could possibly be for a wide open 2-point conversion. What? No, we dissected that when he said it. Like, was the pass absolutely, I don't know, perfect if you were to draw it up with an AI system? I don't know, but I know it was in his numbers. I know nobody was on him. I know he was wide open. I know that it hit him in the numbers and in his hands. I know he had it there. So to say that it's as hard as it possibly could be was a massive stretch. It was bad analysis. And Chris Sims knows more about football than I'll ever know, but that was terrible analysis. And Marcus Spears says, ain't no way in the world this is so unserious. So, of course, Jack Settleman didn't let that go. Co-host of the Punchline podcast with Marlon Humphrey. He says, has Chris Sims put out a think piece on the awful Allen throw to Kincaid that hit him in the hands? Or was that incredible take reserved exclusively for Lamar? So I'm going to look into that for tomorrow. I didn't have time. I'll go check out Pro Football Talk and get Chris Sims' analysis of the whole thing. So there has been a double standard among some, not among others. All right. Let's get to some quick hits, shall we? Now, as we know, after that loss to the Bills, the Bills Mafia started raising money for Mark Andrews charity. Okay, and we can see it here. They set up a GoFundMe for Mark Andrews. And I got this screen grab right before the show started. So probably just before 12 o'clock. They had raised $144,000. That's a whole lot of money. That can do a whole lot of good for Mark Andrews' cause, where he's trying to help young kids with diabetes, since we know that Mark Andrews has type 1 diabetes. So after Kincaid's drop, a Ravens fan decides to return the gesture. This is Will Funk Heiser organized a GoFundMe and started getting Ravens fans to put donations in for Dalton Kincaid's charity, which helps people with autism. Now, it hasn't been up for as long, and I don't know that it's been getting as much play, but Ravens fans have raised $10,000 since this was organized, I assume, yesterday. And so, good on both fan bases. Obviously, the Ravens fan base might have a little bit more to go to hit 140, but it's 10,000. And that will go, Dalton Kincaid can do great things with that money. So I know some people think that all of it is like really an underhanded whatever jab to Mark and the Ravens, and maybe the Ravens fans are doing an underhanded jab back. I'm not that skeptical of the world, and so I choose to view this as like great things from both fan bases. And even if it were to be done with certain intentions that maybe weren't absolutely the best, I don't think these kids with diabetes or autism care much, as long as it gets into their hands and does some good. So good for both fan bases. Meanwhile, this fell under my radar last week with so much going on, but it was reported by Aaron Wilson. He used to be a Ravens reporter. He's now in covering the Texans, but also gets news for all of NFL. So Aaron Wilson tweeted last week that the Ravens had moved on from inside linebackers coach Mark DeLone, per league sources, and DeLone coached Roquan Smith in Baltimore the past season and previously with the Bears. No report that he went on for another job, got promoted somewhere. It just sounds like the Ravens are moving on from him. And the linebackers weren't as good as we all had anticipated. It's true that Roquan Smith ended up as an All-Pro and a Pro Bowler. And I think he finished much better than he started, but it was a problem. And Trenton Simpson, who has all the tools in the world, just hasn't developed, and he wasn't even close. It got to the point where they just couldn't use him anymore, and they started having to use Chris Board and others to fill in. Malik Harrison was in there a few times, and so I'm assuming, since he didn't move on to another job, is they just feel like the linebacker group isn't developing enough. DeLone did replace Zach Orr once Zach moved up to be defensive coordinator. So that will now be one position that John Harbaugh has to fill. Certainly a much easier job to do that than what he had to go through last year, where he just lost almost his entire defensive coaching staff, so many veterans. And they need to develop these guys. They're going to continue, I'm sure, to work through the draft. You're not going to pay a lot of money to anybody else next to Roquan Smith. So get somebody in here. You need the equivalent of a Dr. Rush, who has been working magic with these outside linebackers. And that's what the Ravens will need to do. Meanwhile, Brian McFarland at Ravens Salary Cap reports for Russell Street Report. He said the following 8 former practice squad players who were not re-signed last week are now officially free agents and free to sign with any team. That list includes Salah Amuvai Laulu, which is crazy because I just remember 2 years ago, John Harbaugh saying he might be able to start. And now he went to the practice squad and now he's gone. They could still maybe re-sign him in the future. Who knows? Kadir Ishmael. Now him, I know, according to Jeff Zrebeck, he reported that Kadir had surgery. And so until he passes, physical exams and all that, they can't re-sign him. But the plan sounds like that they will re-sign him. He wants to be back. The Ravens would like to have him. Anthony Kendall, Desmond King, Keith Kirkwood, Josh Tupou, Scotty Washington, and Chris Wormley are all free agents and were not re-signed by the Ravens to future contracts. Kind of a fun little quick hit here. Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Cleveland Browns, is down at the Senior Bowl. Mary Kay has been on the show before doing some previews of Ravens-Browns games. She was at the Senior Bowl and asked Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe about comparisons to Lamar Jackson. Now, obviously, here in Baltimore, we hear this stuff all the time and we roll our eyes, right? But he has been compared to Lamar quite a bit. In fact, Kirby Smart, head coach of Georgia Bulldogs, before they played Alabama in November, and this was in 2023, he was one of the first to compare, or one of the many, I guess, but one of the first in these college years to compare him to Lamar. And Kirby Smart said, Milroe is like when I used to ask my sons on Madden, they wanted to play with the Ravens, and I'd ask, why are you playing with the Ravens? They said, I've got Lamar Jackson. Nobody can tackle him. This guy is bigger, more physical version of that. He is playing at a different speed than anybody else when you watch him. Okay, so no hate on Milroe. It's not his fault that people are comparing him to Lamar, but we have seen this before. And I think what's just happening is because Lamar is the standard. He is the standard that everybody looks to in terms of dual threat quarterbacks, and realizing that it doesn't have to be a statue quarterback standing back there like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and all those guys of the past. Lamar is that standard. So anytime you get a successful quarterback in college, they're probably going to compare him to Lamar. I think that should be viewed as a compliment unless it becomes disrespectful. And I can tell you that Milroe definitely saw it as a compliment, because Mary Kay asked him about these comparisons, and he just was beaming from ear to ear.
Lamar Jackson is very dominant. It's been evident to how he's played this season. For someone that's inspired to go to the NFL, just seeing as he takes this game to the next level each and every year, him being the top of the league, and him definitely being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, that's inspiring for sure. As a young quarterback that's inspired to go to the NFL. So that definitely puts a smile to my face, and I definitely love watching Lamar. Secretly, I'm actually a Ravens fan. I grew up a Ravens fan, so I pull for the Ravens.
See, you don't get as angry when you see it like that, right? When you see it from his angle. When you hear like analysts taking it too far, then it's like, come on. And then you want to push back against the analysts without taking a jab at like these college guys coming up who, like, look at him. Look at him. They ask him about Lamar and he's just smiling. Look at that smile. And then he says, I've secretly been a Ravens fan. He's from Texas originally. I'm sure it's because of Lamar. It's early in the draft process, and I haven't looked too much into it, but so far it seems that many analysts are ranking him as the 3rd quarterback in this draft, behind Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. If that's the case, and he remains as the 3rd, and listen, we are in January 28th, and have I seen draft boards change wildly once insiders like Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper, they start talking to more GMs, and then you start to see like more of a set list closer to the draft in April. Certainly after the combine, we start to get more of a regular one. So, but if he remains the 3rd best, he'd probably be going in the 1st round. I saw some Ravens fans being like, oh, it'd be fun for him to be a backup, but the Ravens aren't going to be spending that type of draft capital. But I do want him to have a better, an improved backup, somebody who I can have a little bit more confidence in, which is easier said than done. And I also read up that on an article out of the Steelers Depot that obviously they're always looking. They've been looking for a quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger, and they have, what are they going to do with Russell Wilson? Are they going to re-sign him? All the things that are going on there. But they also were looking at, a quarterback that they could draft in each round, and they named Milroe is one of the potential ones in the 1st round. So wouldn't that be something if the future, or the bigger, more physical, in Kirby's words, Lamar Jackson came to the AFC North? That would be fun. But I am happy for him. I'm happy. This is such a fun process for these college guys. They've declared for the draft. They don't know where they're going to land. They know their dreams are about to come true. And then to get a Lamar Jackson comparison for him, I'm sure just makes him feel great. So happy for him there. Let's see here. Oh, and by the way, just that we're clear, even though they're comparing him to Lamar, this Sports Illustrated article kind of puts it in context. He said, while he is one of the more fitting Jackson comparisons, Milroe still has a ways to go before reaching Lamar. For instance, he rushed for 1,577 yards and 33 touchdowns in college, while Jackson ran for 4,132 yards and 50 touchdowns. He also needs work on his passing game, as he was inconsistent through his time at Alabama. So, again, anybody that's dual threat is going to be compared to Lamar, but there are levels to this thing, okay? There are levels to this thing. I think that takes us to the end of our quick hits. Let's check in on a couple more super chats, and then we will wrap up. And I do have patrons, Tila. I do have patrons. Bobby hooked me up with that. Let me see. Dream said, did you hear what Jamal Lewis said about the loss? I did not. I'm happy to look that up and maybe address it tomorrow. Feel free to send me a link so I don't have to go searching. Then Pretty Fresh 20 says Ravens should try and get Khalil Mack. I doubt that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to bring in another established big name veteran at inside linebacker. Although, who knows? If Khalil were for some reason super cheap, then maybe that would happen. But whoever comes in here is going to have to look at this. Remember this whole Eddie Jackson situation, right? What Eric DeCosta said last Wednesday, I believe, at their end of season press conference, is he said that he should have been more clear with Eddie Jackson, saying, we're bringing you here in as a backup, not as like the starter or Pro Bowler that you have been in the past. And so Eric DeCosta would have to be clear. Like, the Ravens' number one priority is to develop Trenton Simpson. They have not, while they had to move on from him within the season, my guess is they're looking for that inside linebackers coach that's going to develop him, and they want him to be next to Roquan Smith. So whoever is going to sign here, they're going to have to understand they're the insurance policy. They're not the number one option. I don't think Khalil Mack is at that stage in his career where he's like, all right, well, I'll just wait here and see what happens with Trenton Simpson and maybe I'll get in. As cool as that would be, I just don't think it's going to happen. All right. Let's see here. D Banks, I don't think Khalil Mack is going to be expensive. I don't think Khalil Mack is going to want to be the backup. That's what I just said. Let's see what else. Dreams, you got a link? You got a link for me? If only, here we go. Teenze says, if only Lamar was in a winning mindset franchise. You have to tell me what you mean by that. You don't think that the Ravens are going to want to win? Explain that to me. You got to explain that to me. What else here? Anything else here? All right, let's get to these patrons. Let me see here. Banners. Here we go. Thank you to our patrons, Patrick Crawley and Clinton Ganaway. So my apologies not getting to you guys yesterday, but we do appreciate you and all of your support. If you guys are interested in supporting the Vault, please just Google the Vault and patrons. You can sign up. There are several different levels of patrons that you could join. There's as simple as $2 a month and goes higher. If you want a shout out on the show, I believe Patrick Crawley and Clinton Ganaway, I think they're $4.99 a month. So we appreciate you guys and your support, and it allows us to continue to do what we do here inside the Vault. And yeah, I feel like it was a good day. Good day talking about the John Harbaugh contract situation, which has not begun yet, but the predictions are that they will, and that he will be signed by 2028. The Mark Andrews situation, is there a way they could clear some money? Don't think just straight up cutting him would be the right move, but would they trade or would they extend at a very cheaper rate so that you could still give that money in the future to Isaiah Likely? Talked about the double standard that the facility specifically had towards Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and then some of those quick hits. So we appreciate you guys. Appreciate your support. And I hope you will join us again inside the Vault here tomorrow for the noonday lunch live stream. Maybe. Oh, yes. And the patrons. Tila's the best. The link is in the show notes below. We really might need to make Tila a producer on this show for sure, especially while Bobby is sick. Send your love to Bobby. I know he's looking on Twitter and elsewhere, maybe on Instagram and all that. Send him his love. Help pick him up. He's got to get better. We were just talking yesterday. And by the way, I messed up on Khalil Mack. Thank you, Tanya. Khalil Mack is an edge rusher, not an inside linebacker, as I was projecting with Trenton Simpson. Khalil Mack as an edge rusher. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Pass rushers are usually a little bit more expensive. You got Kyle Van Noy, you got Odafe Owe, you got an up-and-coming Robinson, although he's more of like a stealing the edge kind of guy, although he's gotten his few sacks. I don't hate that one, depending on the price. But I think what would be even better is if they could draft the new young guy, because it just hasn't been working out for him. So I'm sure that they will draft some pass rushers. It's just at what stage, what round are you going to be able to do that? So appreciate you guys for correcting me there. Tanya, thank you for having my back. That was a pretty bad oversight on my part, but appreciate you guys. So I'm now back on the Khalil Mack bandwagon, depending on how much that would cost. So again, get well to Bobby. Thank you to our patrons. Thank you to you guys for coming into the show today. And I will see you back here tomorrow. Have yourself a great day.